America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, a roll call?
Chair West?
Yes.
Director Bennett is not on. Director Mobley?
Here.
Director Tremblay?
Here.
Director Borchard?
Okay, now with that, we're going to adjourn to closed session to return at 1:30. Do we have to, Keely, do we have to sign out and leave this meeting in order to sign into the next one?
Correct.
And then hopefully we can get back into this meeting as easily. But all right, so we will leave this. I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, thank you. Still waiting on Kim.
The board members here, no Kim. Who's got the first presentation? Kim.
Keely, are you there?
Is he calling me?
Keely, we can hear you, David.
Get a message. Brian Bondi's having trouble. The link's not working for him. Wonder if you might check that.
Kim's there. Huh.
So you're getting Andy Water
As attendees, yes.
Kim, are you with us?
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yes.
All right, I'm getting video started. Yeah, for some reason it kept taking me in as a attendee, and it looks like Keely promoted me to panelist. So I think I'm good now. If you can hear me or see me.
Yes.
Well,
Welcome to the Big Boys Club.
Thank you.
It is 1:30. We will return to general session from closed session and can report that there was no action taken in closed session that needs to be reported out. With that, we will resume the regular agenda. I guess we're at item D, agenda review. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Chair West.
Thank you. Public comments. If there's anyone wishing to address the board on matters not otherwise on today's agenda, now is the opportunity to do that. Please, I guess, indicate by raising your hand so that the clerk can give you access to the board. Madam Clerk, any public comments?
No, Chair.
Okay, let's move on to board member comments. Any comments by members of the board? Hearing none, we'll move on then to the consent agenda. There are a couple of items, the minutes of prior meetings. If there are no changes, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
And a second. Because this is a video conference meeting, everything has to be by roll call. So we'll have a roll call on the consent agenda.
Chair West,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Mobley,
Yes.
Director Tremblay,
Yes.
Director Borchert.
All right, that moves us to item number 8 on the agenda, consultant contract amendment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, I'm Kim Loeb, Fox Canyon staff. And this is an item simply to extend the contract end date of our contract with Dudek, our GSP consultant. There's no change in scope or fee. There's one remaining task in the original scope of work, which is to complete a summary document that basically brings the pertinent pieces of all the GSPs together into one document as a management document. And so they, as you know, as soon as they finished the GSPs, they had to move into preparing and submitting the annual reports. And so we have this one remaining item to complete. And should your board approve this item, it would just extend the completion date out to July 31st of this year. And again, there's no change in scope or fee.
Questions or comments from the board? Are there questions or comments from the general public?
No comments, Chair.
Thank you. And then is there a motion to authorize the executive officer to execute the contract amendment?
I move approval, or I move that we authorize the executive director to execute the contract amendment with Dudek.
Second?
Second. D. Bennett.
Okay, we'll need a roll call.
Chair West,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Mobley,
Yes.
Director Tremblay,
Yes.
Director Borchert.
All right, moving on then to item number 9, an authorization for the executive officer to sign a contract modification and terminating the services of special counsel.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair West and board members. Item 9 follows the action taken by your board at the last meeting to retain Stoll Reeves to replace the Nossaman Law Firm as special counsel to the agency in the Las Posas adjudication. This item authorizes the executive officer to sign a contract modification and make the necessary and appropriate adjustments to the contract, and then to terminate the contract to close out the agreement.
comments or comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, how about any, Madam Clerk, any questions or comments from the general public?
No comments, Chair.
I think it's certainly appropriate to authorize the executive officer to take the recommended action subject to an audit of special counsel's fees. And I guess I would make that motion, that subject to an audit, the executive officer is authorized to execute the contract modification and then ratify it, I guess negotiate and ratify the agency's agreement to pay fees that are owed.
Steve Bennett, I'll second.
Questions or comments from the other board members before we move to a roll call? Let's go to a roll call then.
Chair West,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Mobley,
Yes.
Director Tremblay,
Yes.
Director Borchert.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to item number 10, the proposed ordinance to adjust extraction allocations to facilitate the transition from a calendar year to a water year reporting.
Good afternoon again, Chair West, members of the board. I'll see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. There we go. So you should be seeing my screen now, hopefully. Oh, you're seeing on top of it. On the side, are you seeing the Zoom thing or just the window? Just the PowerPoint?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
As
Okay.
am I.
All right, very good. I'm seeing something slightly different here, so still getting used to the Zoom world. So there we go. For a little background on this, so as you know, Sigma requires that we move to reporting on a water year basis, which is October 1st through September 30th of the following year. Your board adopted the new ordinance for new extraction allocation ordinance for Oxnard and Pleasant Valley basins, which becomes operative on October 1st and moves to that new reporting period. Your board has stated its intent to also adopt new allocation ordinances effective October 1st in the Las Posas Valley and Arroyo Santa Rosa Valley. And so if that's completed by then we'll need to move them into water year reporting as well. And your board's executive committee discussed the issue of transition of allocations at its May 14th, 2020 meeting. We'll talk about those recommendations here towards the end of this presentation. So currently, agricultural operators, their allocation is set by Emergency Ordinance E, Annual Efficiency Allocation, which we also call IAI, and they're on a crop year reporting period from August, for this current crop year, August 1st of 2019 through July 31st of 2020. M&I operators, including domestic operators, are on a calendar year reporting period. And presently, M&I operators in all the basins are on the Emergency Ordinance E, Temporary Extraction Allocation, or T, and domestic operators not on T remain on the historical or baseline allocation as applicable to that operator. So the need is for ag operators to have an allocation for the 2-month gap period after the end of the current crop year reporting period ends July 31st and the start of the new allocation and October 1st. And M&I and domestic operators need to prorate the current reporting year allocation from the current ending on December 31st to end on September 30th, so that the new allocation period and reporting period can start on the 1st. And the goal here is to establish an allocation that allows groundwater extractions that would have been allowed under the current ordinance, basically to facilitate the transition as it would have happened had there not been a transition. So we know, of course, that ag irrigation varies significantly over the year, and that August and September among the peak irrigation months. Of course, we implemented AMI on the meters of ag operators beginning last year. And so we evaluated those AMI data for 2019 to look at the percent of the annual pumping that was pumped during that 2-month August and September period. And so what we're looking at here on the chart is the percent of the wells that fall in each of these brackets. As you can see that the vast majority, 89% of the wells extracted 35% or less of the total annual extractions during that August and September period. Just a small portion pumped more than that based on the AMI data analysis. For M&I operators, AMI was not required until October 1st, so we don't have the full year or the period leading up to October 1st. However, the larger urban water suppliers have to report their monthly potable water production to the state water board, and we're pulled down those data for the cities of Camarillo, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Ventura, as well as Waterworks District Number 1. And what we have plotted here is the percent of the total annual production that was produced between January and September. And you can see this is pretty tightly grouped between 75 and 76% of the annual total in that 9-month period. So we, as I mentioned before, we presented this analysis and the executive committee considered it, and we provided these recommendations, which the executive committee concurred with, and that is extraction allocation for ag operators for the 2-month transition period of August and September 2020 should be set at 35% of each operator's crop year 2019 to 2020 efficiency allocation. Extraction allocation for M&I operators for the January 1st through September 30th period should be 76% of that operator's 2020 T, and similarly for January 1st through September 30th at 76% of the historical baseline for the domestic operators. And then the final recommendation was to establish a simplified variance period for operators to provide evidence of different usage during the transition period. So the ordinance before you today does just that, and I'll briefly walk through the parts of the ordinance. Article 1 is recitals of findings. Article 2 states the purpose, which is to adjust the allocations leading up to October 1st, when the agency intends to transition to water year reporting of groundwater extractions. And the applicability, so this will apply to all the basins within the agency for which the agency's adopted a new allocation system to replace emergency ordinance E with an operative date of October 1st. So presently this applies to Oxnard and Pleasant Valley basins and and would apply to Las Posas and Santa Rosa Valley if the agency adopts the ordinances as the stated board's intent with the operative date of October 1st. And this is a little bit simplified from the language here in the ordinance itself, but Article 5 talks about the transition period allocation adjustments. And for ag operators, it implements that 35% of the operator's crop year, current crop year annual efficiency allocation to be available for that 2 month transition period. It indicates that the agency will send a special extraction statement for that 2 month period, and then the agricultural operators will be required to return that special extraction statement along with a photo of the flow meter at the end of the reporting period, September 30th, to get us at the end of that point to move into the new allocation reporting period. And then for M&I, for the first half year, first 6 month reporting period of January 1st through June 30th of this year, the operators would provide the completed semi-annual extraction statement as they always do. Then a special extraction statement will be prepared and sent at the end of the next 3 month period. And M&I operators also will then submit that completed special extraction statement with the photo of the flow meter at the end, September 30th. And then the allocation is consistent with the recommendations of 76% of the operator's TEA, or for domestic operators without TEA, it's 70%, 76% of the operator's historical baseline allocation to apply to that 9 month period from January through September. The variance procedure is simplified, and this is for the transition allocation. Any operator can submit a written request to the executive officer for consideration, and the purpose of that is to allow an operator to demonstrate that their extractions during the prorated portion of prior crop year or calendar year were greater than the percentages set forth in Article 5 of this ordinance. And we'll have to provide the evidence left right that's showing that backs that request up. And those variances need to be submitted, applications in writing on or before August 31st of this year. And then the last is the effective date, standard effect 30 days after adoption. So that concludes my presentation summary of the ordinance before you, and request that you receive and file this presentation. Since it is an ordinance, we have conducted the necessary advertising legal notice, and request that your board open and conduct a public hearing. And then upon closing of that, we recommend that you consider adoption of the ordinance.
Before we move to open the public hearing, any questions or comments from the board? The only point that I wanted to make sure was clear was that this adjusted extraction allocation for that 2 month period does not reduce the annual allocation that begins on October 1st. I'm correct, isn't that right?
Yes, you are correct. It has no effect on the new allocation October 1st. This just is the transition period through September 30th. October 1st starts a new water year, and the allocations start fresh at that point currently for Oxnard and Pleasant Valley.
Understood. Any other questions or comments from the board? with that, we will open a public hearing and invite questions or comments from the public with respect to the proposed ordinance. Madam Clerk, please let us know if and when there are any questions.
No questions, Chair.
Okay. With that, then we will close the public hearing and consider adoption of the ordinance. Any questions or comments from the board at this point? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Steve Bennett, I move recommendation that we adopt the recommended actions.
Is there a second? Okay, and we need a roll call, please.
Chair West,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Mobley,
Yes.
Director Tremblay,
Yes.
Director Borchert.
The last item on the agenda today is an executive officer's report. It's a receive and file item. I just need a motion and a second to receive and file.
So moved.
And I gather again, because this is a video conference meeting, we need a roll call.
Chair West,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Mobley,
Yes.
Director Tremblay,
Yes.
Director Borchert.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. With that, we are adjourned until the next special board meeting scheduled for June 12th. Thank you all. Stay safe. See you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Goodbye.